Hello, everyone, and welcome to A New Direction. My name's Jay Izso, and oh man, do we have another great show for you. It's fantastic. I'm with Dr. Melissa Robinson-Winemiller. I'm going to talk about her a little bit later here. It's second here. She wrote this book called The Empathic Leader, right? And, we don't think of empathy as a very important skill when it comes to leadership. Listen, I'm a Daniel Goleman fan. I've never made any bones about it on the show that I love Daniel Goleman and his work on emotional intelligence. And I could talk about that endlessly, but we do not understand the connection between emotional intelligence and empathy. And what we don't understand about empathy is that as a leader, it is probably the most overlooked skill that you need to develop is empathy. And you'll say, Jay, empathy, come on, I've got a business to run here. All right. We're not saying that. She's not saying that. She's not saying that you got, but what she is saying, based on the research that she's put together, empathy can drive your profits and productivity. I'll let you chew on that for a second. Okay. All right. Enough chewing because we're going to talk about it. So, we're going to talk about empathy and how it drives profits and productivity. It's a great book. Let me introduce you to Dr. Melissa Robinson-Winemiller. She is an author, TEDx speaker, leadership coach, host of the Empathic Leader podcast. Check her out. Please do that. Motivated by personal experience and a deep level of learning, Melissa has conducted extensive research on the role of empathy in effective leadership through the lens of emotional intelligence. Her groundbreaking findings and compelling stage presence have inspired audiences around the world, including TEDx institutions such as Yale, University, Columbia, Northwestern, so many. She's also spoken in Oxford, Cambridge, been written and written for LA Weekly, Deadline News UK, the San Francisco, she goes on. Dr. Robinson-Winemiller is on a mission to transform the way we connect and understand one another within organizations by applying strategic, actionable empathy to help build more connected, human-centered workplaces and communities. Try saying that 3 times fast. With more titles currently in development, she continues her work to redefine leadership through the power of empathy and emotional intelligence. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show. Welcome for the first time ever to A New Direction, Dr. Melissa Robinson-Winemiller. Welcome to A New Direction.
Wow, Jay, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. Now I got to live up to all of that, right?
Oh, you will. You will. Your book does not let you down, and you won't either. So you're gonna be just fine. You're doing it. Empathy. You make a note here in your author's note. You say something out of the gate. You said it's no longer enough to simply have empathy. It's time to learn how to actively use empathy. Okay. We've got some work to do here because I think we know what empathy is, right? I think we know what it is. But then you say we have to actively use it. So let's just start with empathy in general. Okay. And let's start talking about what it is and then your connection to why this is important to leadership. So let's just start there and then we'll get to the active part. But what is empathy? I mean, how do we define it in such a way?
So empathy, we usually think about it as, I feel what you feel, right? Mm-hmm. And that's part of it. Feeling is part of empathy, but it's not all of it, which is part of where I think we don't quite have this put together correctly. Empathy is actually about understanding and connection. And it can be through feeling. It can also be logically. I mean, cognitive empathy, I logically understand what you feel. I just don't feel anything. Which, I mean, sometimes for leaders, when you've got to disconnect from all that feeling or you're going to end up burnt out, that's the correct skill to use. Sometimes it's a matter of self-empathy, which is something there's not a lot of research on, but I think has greater importance than maybe we're giving it. So that's kind of a direction I'm heading right now. But really, when we think about it, it's not feeling, it's understanding and connecting. Could be through perspective taking, putting yourself in someone else's shoes. How would that feel if that were you, kind of thing. Could be by just, thinking through it and going, well, how would I feel if that was me? Could be from having been in the same situation. Maybe not. But at its base, it's a big umbrella, understanding and connecting.
Okay. So understanding and connecting, and I listen. You pointed out there's like 43 different types of empathy out there, right? And then you went and you broke it down. There's three. There's three that really focus on leadership, right? We have cognitive empathy, emotional empathy, and then we also have self-empathy. Those are the three big ones that we had here.
Yeah.
So help us now as leaders who own a company. Help us bridge the gap of why empathy is so imperative to the leadership part of it. Why do we need empathy as a leader?
Because all businesses start and end with people.
Hmm.
I don't care if your business is AI. It doesn't matter if it's making widgets. It doesn't matter if it's strictly dealing with something intangible like that. At the end of the day, your stakeholders, your employees, your customers, your board of director, those are people. So it's up to you as a leader to really be able to understand and connect with those people. Because if you don't, you're losing the opportunity to be able to lead these people effectively. And if you don't understand and connect with your people, it's really hard to be able to access the emotional intelligence skills that you need to really be a superstar leader. Because without those emotional intelligence skills, it just doesn't work.
Hmm. I'm going to ask you this in terms of when we think about applying empathy to leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Where is it that the leader? I mean, I think there's going to be leaders out there who are going to go, all right, this feels a little vulnerable and it feels a little soft to me. How do I connect that to profit, productivity, and innovation? How is me being more empathetic towards you? How is that going to help our business grow in those three areas?
So there was research done by Ernst & Young, the big four international consultancy, and it was done after the end of the pandemic, because what they wanted to look at was specifically how empathy affected the organizations that implemented it. Because this was right after, the pandemic, and people were like, oh, these people actually have empathy. They allowed us to work from home. They understood, the overload we were going through. They actually were able to do things that connected with us as people. What this survey found is that in these organizations where they used empathy effectively, that they were able to raise productivity by 87%, innovation by 86%, and profit by 84%. And that's not my opinion. That's what Ernst & Young said.
Okay.
So,
Okay, so we got research to back this up. Okay, so then now comes, because we're going to dance around this in EQ or emotional intelligence piece. And as I was reading this book, I felt like I had a chicken and egg problem. And so maybe you can help me with my chicken and egg problem. I was kind of like, okay, I think emotional intelligence is required to have empathy, and yet empathy's kind of boosters emotional intelligence. So I have this chicken and egg problem. What do I start with empathy, but I can't have empathy without emotional intelligence. But I know that if I don't have emotional intelligence, I can't have empathy. But empathy does bolster my help me, maybe help me. Maybe it's not us. Help me.
No, it's a great question. And I mean, for years, we put empathy in the emotional intelligence tool bag too. I mean, with Daniel Goleman and going back to some studies before that even, which makes sense, right? Because it's all these, I'll admit, I hate soft skills. I hate that word. I hate that term. They're not soft skills. They're really tools, right? So you've got this tool bag and it's filled with communication and motivation and screwdrivers and hammers and chisels and all of this. So you've got this emotional intelligence tool bag. I think you have to have empathy first, because you need to be able to understand and connect with your people, because otherwise you're reaching into this tool bag and you don't know whether you need to pull out a saw or a left-handed screwdriver. And I think that might be part of the reason why we just haven't been able to implement emotional intelligence skills like we could. I think if we start with empathy so that we can actually understand and connect first, Now these tools become really effective, and you're not trying to hammer in a screw.
Right. So you make a statement in chapter 1, which is entitled "Where to Begin," uh, and what is empathy anyway? I'm actually skipping over ahead of myself. You say something actually prior to that, which is, why aren't we using emotional intelligence more effectively already? And you give 2 reasons. You say the first is an inability to explain how to use it and why it's such an important asset. And then second is that even if someone knows and understands empathy, they rarely know how to use it. Clarify those 2 things of why we're not using the emotional intelligence, which includes empathy, by the way, as an explain how to use it and why it's such an important asset, and then understand empathy and rarely know how to use it. Help us get some clarity on that.
So most of us think we pretty much know what empathy is. And it's kind of, you learn it growing up. It's not like it's something you get in a class or learn from a teacher, which honestly, in other countries, they do. They teach social emotional learning starting from like 6 years old until 16. So they actually do learn these kinds of skills. In this country, we don't. Social emotional learning has gotten kind of a bad reputation for a lot of different reasons, but we don't put it into schools. So because of that, we kind of have a lay person's idea of what empathy is. And most of us think it's the I feel what you're feeling, and that's it. So if you ask someone, do you have empathy? They're like, yeah, I can understand what someone's feeling. And I know what, my partner or my daughter or, my boss or whatever, I can pick up on that. Okay, well, now that you've picked up on that, how are you using that? Are you actually using it skillfully to be able to hit your emotional intelligence skills and be able to communicate more effectively? Are you using it to be able to motivate, or are you just sitting in that feeling and going, yeah, I understand. That's cool, and just leaving it at that? Having it's fantastic. I mean, because there are people that don't, and they're a little scary. I mean, you have a background in psychology, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But all the same, having it isn't enough. It's like a treadmill. You have a treadmill, that's fantastic. But if you don't use it, you're not really going to get any outcomes from it.
I think oftentimes as leaders, it's the last thing on our mind to be empathetic.
Yeah.
I think it's just, I don't think it's I'm, as someone who coaches, right, and you coach too, I think it's a primary skill for us to kind of go through and cognitively understand what they're feeling, but also emotionally tapping into those feelings so that you get a sense of the depth of the feeling of what they're dealing with. Because it's really easy I think, for us as human beings, because we're inherently selfish. I don't think I'm saying anything that's bad. Nobody's writing me any negative letters right now. I'll check my X account later. But but I think it's something where we get so focused on being driven to what we're doing that we don't stop long enough to go, okay, well, how are they really? What is the real feeling behind what they're doing? Because we misinterpret things so easily, right? Because we take things at face value and we don't look beyond, well, where is that coming from? And I feel like that's part of our you call it empathic response. I think there is something there that we have to stop long enough to not just take everything at face value and go a little bit further. Am I getting that even close to being right?
I do think that's part of it. I really do. And I think the other part of it as well is that fear of being vulnerable. Because if you're actually stepping in to take perspective and understand how someone else is feeling, you're opening yourself up to those feelings, right? If you're saying, I feel what you feel, that means if someone's feeling grief, you're feeling grief, which means you've got to be vulnerable and have courage to actually face that feeling. And a lot of people would rather just say, no, 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 no. I just can't. I just can't. And I mean, sometimes if you're overwhelmed and there's a lot going on, maybe that's true. But to make that your matter of course go to, because the vulnerability is scary or the feelings are hard to feel or whatever, then there's a little more of a problem. And I think as leaders, sometimes it's easy to say, I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't want to feel that feeling. I don't want to even think that feeling. Nope, that's too much.
You say there, you've in your research, I shouldn't say you say, you've done the research. So let me rephrase that. In the research that you've done, there are 43 categories of empathy, and you say they're roughly organized into 8 broad groups. But as you studied it, you wanted to know how empathy becomes an actionable skill, and you've boiled it down from 8 categories to the 3 most necessary. And I preempted them: cognitive empathy, emotional empathy, and self-empathy.
Mhm.
So let's maybe get a little more clarity in some of the differences for leadership in particular. These 3 categories of empathy. So let's just do them in the order that we did them. Let's talk about what is cognitive empathy.
So cognitive empathy is I logically understand what you feel, but I don't feel anything.
Okay.
And especially for leaders, I think that's a very important one, because if you are constantly taking, other people's feelings and feeling this, especially when you're dealing with large groups, you end up burning out. It can be overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing too that research is showing is that it's just hard to have empathy for large groups of people. Stalin said, one death is a tragedy, a million deaths is a statistic.
Mm.
And, it's horrible to think about, but that's just kind of the way the human mind works.
Mm.
That's why on the news, the story that leads is going to be the one little girl that fell down a well instead of the wars that are going on in the Middle East.
Right.
So, with cognitive empathy, you're actually able to lead groups of people and use empathy where emotional empathy may not kick in.
Okay. I think we see a lot of cognitive empathy simply because we are inundated with, if it bleeds, it leads.
Yes.
And so what happens is that, on the news. And so what happens is I feel like our empathy has been dulled. I don't know if that's an accurate statement, but it's at least my anecdotal feeling is that we've been dulled just by seeing, because there's no good news. Okay. I mean, you don't wake up in the morning and go, oh gosh, the world is great. Everything is happy. Everybody's happy. They're reporting only all the good things that are going on in the world today. Nobody ever does that. That's not what the news is. The news only gives us bad, right? Tragedy, bad. It only gives that. I wonder if we're dulled. Empathetic.
You want a scary statistic?
Sure, I'd love one.
There's a longitudinal study that's been going on since the early 70s, and they look at incoming college freshmen. And the last time they had actually put out a report on it or whatever was 2007. And what they found that between the early 70s and 2007, that empathy had gone down in college students by 40%.
Wow.
And that's 20 years ago now.
Wow. Okay, I don't even know what to do with that. Outside it says that my intuition was correct.
Yes.
But it also says that to me that it's not changing.
Oh, it gets scarier. If we talk about dark triad, which right? I mean, they're the people that have no empathy. So
Right.
Psychopaths, sociopaths, Machiavellians, and narcissists.
Yep.
They used to estimate it was like 1 in 20 that were actual certifiable, narcissistic personality disorder or whatever. Now they're saying it's more like 1 in 14.
Yeah. And it's the reason why they wanted to eliminate narcissistic personality disorder from the DSM-6 or whatever it was that we're at now.
Yeah.
Because it's become so much more prevalent in society, and all of that is defined by what's normal. Yeah. And they were actually considering at one point, in one of the articles I was reading, of actually eliminating narcissistic personality disorder because it was becoming so normal in society. That was frightening to me.
Yeah.
That was even more frightening to me that it was even a thought process.
I agree.
So, I mean, and because there is no empathy in these dark triad groups. You're listening to Dr. Melissa Robinson-Winemiller. The book is entitled The Empathic Leader, How EQ, that's emotional intelligence, via empathy, it transforms leadership for better profit, productivity, and innovation. You're listening to her here on A New Direction. Hey, folks, I got to do a little sponsorship here. I talk about this Zoundy. As an author, I got to tell you, it's the most amazing thing. I was speaking in Salt Lake City. They gave me a code, and it's an audiobook platform where I gave away my book for free, my audiobook for free to every person in the audience. Hundreds of people had an opportunity. Now you go, okay, why would you do that? Here's what's cool. When they download the book and listen to the book on Zoundy, which by the way sounds great, I get their email addresses and I get to interact with my listeners. No other platform allows you to do that, where I can actually interact with those people who listen to my book. So listen, if you're an author, publisher, professional in the audiobook space, check them out. Zoundy.com, Zoundy.com. Now listen, there's a special offer through this show only. Zoundy.com/J, that's J-A-Y. Use my code JAY25. If you do that, you're going to get special savings. You're going to be so glad you did. Check it out. It's a great, great platform. And Linda Craft Team Realtors for 40 years plus. They have been helping people transition in life. Listen, they know how to take the stress out of that transition. Every place you've ever lived has been a life transition. They know how to do it. They're unaffiliated with any national company. They've been helping thousands of people. They can help you. Check them out. They are the specialists in transition. It's really simple. Just go to lindacraft.com, LINDACRAFT.com. And we're back here with Dr. Melissa Robinson-Winemiller. Her book, The Empathic Leader, How EQ via Empathy Transforms Leadership for Better Profit, Productivity, and Innovation. And we're talking about how empathy and leadership sometimes has a disconnect, and that's what we've been doing here as we've been defining empathy. We're going to dig a little deeper. We're going to talk about some other things in empathy and how empathy and leadership interact. There's a process to this. Oh, well, actually, we need to go back because we didn't finish the other ones. Because we talked about cognitive empathy. Let's talk about emotional empathy. What's emotional empathy?
So that is the traditional I feel what you feel empathy.
Okay.
Perspective taking, you're grieving, so I feel that as well. So that one most people get a hold of pretty easy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think in what we talked about prior to the break, do you think in this study that they were referring more to this emotional connected empathy or the cognitive empathy that we originally defined?
It looks like in some of the research, it's going more towards a bi model of empathy where they combine cognitive and emotional.
Mm-hmm.
So what they would have done at the start in the 70s, I don't know. But my guess is that as it's progressed, they're probably looking more at both of those.
Okay. The third one is self-empathy. I want to guy. This is silly me. I want to just go, oh, I think we all have self-empathy. I think we kind of are empathetic towards ourselves, but maybe we're not. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe there's something more. Help us dig into self-empathy a little bit here.
Yeah. Because if you're thinking, empathy in terms of understanding and connection, it's a matter of understanding and connecting with yourself. So for instance, one thing that's really important to remember is that empathy and judgment cannot exist in the same space.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're thinking about self-empathy, the second you're dealing with shame, the second you're dealing with self-judgment, the second you're trying to avoid feelings, you're not able to give yourself that self-empathy. Mm. So I think we close ourselves off from it a lot more than we realize. Mm. Like if you think about leaders, right? A lot of us, I guess, are very driven, very high self-actualized, very ambitious, very, we get the job done because if you're in that position, that's what you have to do. Mm. But a lot of leaders get into these positions not because they're the best leaders, but because they're the best technicians or the best politicians or the best, they bring in the biggest contracts or that kind of thing. So you're already dealing with some imposter syndrome. I'm here, maybe I shouldn't be here as a leader. I'm going to go through it the way everybody's always done it before me, but I don't know if I'm doing the best job. The second that imposter syndrome comes in, now you're dealing with self-judgment. Oh man, I'm really messing this up. And that's when the self-empathy shuts down because, they don't necessarily want to understand and connect. And immediately it's we're going to do this the way we've always done this because this is how we've always done it. And you will do it because I told you to do it. Command and control style leadership. I don't want to feel the self-judgment and the shame. Self-empathy is out the door.
Mm. You say, about self-empathy. How we relate to ourselves and our own experiences, self-awareness and self-reflection are all part of this. And I'm guessing here how we relate to ourselves is also how we're going to relate to others. And
Mhm.
and I'm thinking that we can't separate the two. And if we don't have a good relationship with ourselves, or if we're not willing to look at ourselves deeply enough, then we're probably not going to be very good at um, practicing empathy with others. Do I got that right, or am I missed something there?
Absolutely. I mean, charity begins at home. If you can't show up for yourself, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing is too. I think we both use the same analogy. I know I do it with my coaching clients, and I think you wrote it here in the book, right? We get on the plane. The plane's about ready to take off. The flight attendant comes on and they go through their spiel. And there's one point in the spiel, they go, in the unlikely event that we should lose cabin pressure, masks will fall from the ceiling. And then the very first thing they say is what? Put your mask on first
Yeah.
before you put it on anyone else. And the more I think about that analogy, and I use it frequently, and I'm sure you do too. But if we can't take care of ourselves in this, whether it's cognitive or emotional empathy, we're not going to be able to be very good at this, are we?
No, not at all. And it's not selfish. We hear that, well, I feel like it's selfish to take care of me first. But let's think of it on a grand scale, right? You're running an organization. If this organization doesn't run and everybody loses their job and everything goes under, and as a leader, you are so burnt out and fried that you're completely done, you haven't necessarily understood and connected with anybody.
Hmm.
So if you want to be able to understand and connect with this organization so that it can flourish and thrive, you have got to understand and connect with yourself first. There almost isn't a choice.
How disconnected are we really from ourselves? I have to believe it's much higher than we think, right?
Oh,
I,
yeah.
I, I know that Dr. Tasha Urich did a study several years ago. Well, I mean, not that many years ago, but a few years ago, that on self-awareness. And 95% of college professors, she did this with college professors, 95% of college professors felt that they were very self-aware. But then when they did the study further, she found out that 15% on their best day, maybe self-aware. And
Yeah.
so there's this issue of self-awareness that goes into our own self-empathy. Tease that out for us about our lack of self-awareness when it comes to our own self-empathy, which leads to, of course, better empathy with others.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting that you bring up that statistic, because there's a parallel one in empathy that, 95% of people said they had it, leaders specifically, but like 14% of their employees said they actually were able to use it actionably. So,
So the
yeah.
statistics are pretty close between self-awareness and
Yeah.
empathy. It's almost identical.
I would bet that a lot of those virtue emotions probably run pretty parallel, because if you're not going to be aware of your own empathy, you're not going to be aware of your humility, you're not going to be aware of your vulnerability. I have a sneaking suspicion that they would all be pretty close,
You're gonna have to send me that research so I can send it to Tasha,
You
because
got it.
I'm connected with her, and we talk a lot about some of the research because I'm blown away by her research and blown away by the stuff that you put together too, by the way. So you're gonna have to give me that study and I'll send it to her, because I think there's something bigger going on there when they're that close, right? I mean,
Yes.
I mean, when you're within 1 percentage point, we're talking about something that's on the same level. And I think you're probably right on that. You talk about what empathy is not. So I'm going to throw these out here, and I want you to kind of walk us through those. Okay. So I'm just going to throw one of them out, and then you tell me, okay. So like, for instance, empathy is not sympathy. Okay.
Right.
Some people think that. Why is it not sympathy?
Because with empathy, you're actually putting yourself in the other person's shoes.
Okay.
With sympathy, you're seeing it through your eyes. So, like with empathy, the one I really like is empathy is what allows me to step out of my bubble and into yours. You're
Mm.
not taking responsibility for them. You're not really doing anything necessarily. You're just in that feeling.
Mm.
With sympathy, usually there's an element of judgment because you're seeing it through your eyes and you're comparing.
Mm.
And it isn't a bad thing. It's what we do as humans, but it's specifically why in healthcare, They're trained to approach patients with empathy, cognitive empathy, so they don't burn out, and not sympathy. Because on what could be the worst day of your life, you don't want someone to approach you with judgment and pity.
Okay. Empathy is not compassion.
Nope. They go together. They're really close. If you really want to get down to brass tacks, empathy is just you're in the feeling. There's actually no action at all. Compassion is then when you take that feeling and you act on it. And that's why it's so important to understand they're separate, because if you have compassion without empathy first, you can kind of step into a hole with nothing but good intentions. Like, so you think about the old couple stereotype, right? That she's had a bad day and she comes home and she wants her husband to just listen to her, but the husband is like, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to get it. I'm going to go for it. She wants him to be in empathy. She wants him to be in that feeling with her. He immediately jumps to compassion and wanting to take that action, wanting to fix it. But because he didn't tap into empathy first, it kind of falls on deaf ears.
You know, that's so interesting because I interviewed Dr. John Gray, who wrote Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and subsequent books on the show. And he makes almost identically the same point you just made, but he didn't use the word empathy. And but he made this exact almost word for word what you just said.
Really?
And it's really interesting that you two said almost identically the same thing. He didn't use the word empathy specifically, but it's that empathic response that is what they're looking for, not the compassionate response of trying to fix it. You know, because I'm a guy, okay, and I'm going to be honest with you. Sometimes I'm just looking for an on-off switch in your life, you know, with my wife, you know, that goes, oh, well, here's the problem. Your switch is off. Let me just switch it on. Right. And so, right. And I have to remind myself, oh no, that's not what she wants from me, you know, because that could be a compassionate response. I'm being compassionate because I'm fixing it. Right. When she doesn't want me to fix it.
Exactly.
She doesn't really want me to fix it.
No,
that's not what she wants from me. And I have to constantly remind myself, right? Don't fix it. Don't fix it. Don't fix it. It's not okay. Don't do it. But okay, empathy is not compassion. Okay, here's the next one. This is fun. This is funny for me. I'm gonna do it funny. Empathy is not woo-woo.
Yes. And I appreciate that actually, because that's kind of how I heard it in my head when I wrote it. So.
That's kind of how I heard it in my head too.
So it's perfect.
I really wanted to raise my voice. I really wanted to go, empathy is not woo-woo. That's what I really wanted to do. That's what I wanted to do. I'll probably get letters about that too. Okay, that's fine.
It's all right. Might as well have a joke. It's all good.
It's all good. Yeah, we could laugh. It's all good.
So there is a. Oh, go ahead. I didn't.
Yeah. Well, I kind of got you off track. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
It's woo-woo. It's not woo-woo. So help us there.
Well, first of all, I enjoy a good laugh, so I'll laugh anytime. It's all good by me. But the thing is there's just this kind of idea that, you know, there's this empathic side of things. That's all feeling and all energy and that sort of thing. And I just wanted to make sure that I made this distinction that that's not what we're talking about here. I'm talking about something that's data-driven, that's outcomes-oriented, that's skills-based. You know, I chose the word empathic on purpose. And you and I kind of talked about this. I kind of waffled back and forth on it. But in the academic literature, they do use that, because if you can cut a whole, you know, syllable off a word that you have to write 100,000 times, then why not? Plus, for me, the word empathetic ends with pathetic. And I don't think that helps our case.
When you wrote that to me, I literally sat back and went, huh, okay, well, I'm going to giggle about that because now I'm feeling pathetic. So there it goes. So, okay, I literally said to her, no worries. Interesting. No worries. I understand. Okay, well, let's move on because I'm feeling pathetic. Let's just move on from there. There it is.
And we talked about it too. I went back and forth on that and back and forth and back. And that's part of the author's thing, right? Yeah. Even though it's published, I still rewrite chapters in my head. So.
I'm still doing it with my 4 books too. So I get it. I understand it. Here's the last one. Empathy is not coddling.
Yes.
You want to go with more than that?
fine. That's enough, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yes.
yes, yes. Okay, all right, moving on.
Correct. Next question.
Next question. Empathy's not coddling. That's so good. You're so good. That's awesome.
Well, that kind of, in a certain degree, comes back to some of the younger generations in particular, the millennials and the Gen Zs, where they get this reputation for wanting to be coddled and being snowflakes and being, you know, all the way along. And that's not what empathy is. Empathy is going to be understanding them where they are and being able to connect and understand as human beings. It's not going to be easing their way and making it, as pain-free as possible. It's going to mean being kind when you have to deliver not great news or critique or that sort of thing. But it's not protecting and making sure that, nothing gets in and nothing bad happens.
Okay, and then the last one, which I think is going to be a surprise to people. Empathy is not sensitive.
Yes. Yes, and that does surprise people.
Yeah.
Usually when I'm talking to someone and we're talking about sensitivity,
Mhm.
it's in terms of themselves. I think in a way we're back to the me versus we kind of lens. I've seen people that can be very, very sensitive and to their own feelings and, oh, that hurt me and, oh, that was bad and, oh, I can feel this because I feel it. But what I'm hearing is this is me. This is what I'm feeling. Whereas empathy is going to be, I understand what you're feeling. I'm sensitive to what you're feeling, but not because it's what's going on with me. It's because of what's going on with you.
Mm, mm. You move on from this, and we talk about the empathy, courage connection. And I thought this was interesting. I'm a word person, so I love digging into words and what they really mean. I did not put this together. I mean, I was like going, wow, that's pretty cool. I mean, I mean, I knew, but I didn't put the two together, that empathy and courage go together. Help us bridge that gap between empathy and courage.
If you're going to open yourself up to someone else, which with empathy is what you're doing, whether you're feeling it, whether you're thinking through it, even if it's empathy for yourself, you're probably going to face something dark. Now, the interesting thing with empathy is it isn't always dark feelings. It doesn't always have to be, but that's just kind of how we tend to do it, how we tend to think of it. You're feeling someone's grief. You're feeling someone's sadness. You're feeling someone's despondency. If you as a human being know you're walking into that and you do it anyway, that takes courage because you're open to those feelings that are not going to be comfortable and you're vulnerable to another human being. And that takes a lot of courage, honestly. There are people that spend their whole lives avoiding that.
I'm going to throw a question you actually brought up in the book that you ask us, and that is, what's the difference between warmth and empathy?
Warmth is like a social convention. It's kind of like the difference between nice and kind. Warmth is something that we learn to do. These are warmth cues. These are things that help build rapport. These are things that, in our society we do to create synergy between human beings. But warmth as a thing is different across cultures. What's considered warm here could be considered disrespectful in another culture or even cold, depending on, a different culture altogether. Empathy is cross-cultural. There is some biological basis to empathy and neurobiological and psychological and philosophical. And I mean, it spans a bunch of different things. But we as humans have empathy. It's part of our wiring. Warmth is something that's learned, and it's something that can be turned on and off.
One of the things that starts to come out of all this, because, in business, we talk about building rapport, right? And I think maybe that has warmth involved in it because, being nice and being warm, and we try to build rapport, but we're really not being empathetic. And I think in the sales process, that comes out pretty quickly, where I'm trying to build some sort of connection with you. It's warm, it's nice, right? The social conventions. What would, if we took a more empathetic view, I would think that, whether it's cognitive, emotional, or a combination of both, I would think that we would be better in that sales if we were a sales professional in that sales opportunity. Can you kind of help bridge that gap for us a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, I think right there, you're talking about the salesman that comes in and then after they leave, they're like, yeah, he was just insincere. I felt like he was just building this rapport so that he could, make his sale. And that makes me feel like a mark. It's because of the insincerity of it, it leaves a completely different atmosphere. Whereas if you're actually using empathy, you're understanding where the customer is at, you're wanting to be able to help them with their problems, which is what a good salesman do. If you have a product or an idea that is going to help someone, you want to be able to help them. Now that's empathy. You're not just unloading a product, you're actually there to help them.
See, that's so good. That's so good because that is a transformative salesperson right there. And what you've done is you've given them an amazing customer experience, not customer service, because then what you've done is you've tapped into their real pain point, if you will.
Yes.
Right? That's so good. That's why this book is so good. The book is entitled The Empathic Leader, How EQ via Empathy Transforms Leadership for Better Profit, Productivity, and Innovation. Outstanding, with Dr. Melissa Robinson-Winemiller. You're listening to her here on A New Direction. Hey, folks, my sponsors, love them. Zoundy is one of them. Ultimate game changer for authors, publishers, professionals, and audiobook space. Listen, I got a code. I give my book out for free. In fact, I'll tell you what, if you will go to my LinkedIn profile, and I will put out a LinkedIn code where you can download my audiobook for free. Seriously. Here's the cool thing. We're going to be able to talk about it, what you liked about it, what you didn't like about it, what you want me to do better, what you want me to write next is pretty cool. So listen, if you're an author, publisher, professional, listen, go to Zoundy.com. Better yet, I've got a code to save you some money. Zoundy.com/J, ZOUNDY.com/J. Use J25, JAY25, unlock the savings. You're going to be so glad you did. Linda Craft Team Realtors, listen, I love them, but here's something that's really cool. They have one of the most amazing websites out there. Matter of fact, I think it's the best real estate website I've ever seen. Here's the thing. It's not what every other real estate website has, right? Where you got listings and things like that. No. They actually talk to a child psychologist about how to move with children. They talk to a veterinarian about how to move with a pet. They have this show called Real Estate right now where they talk about real estate things that you don't understand and know. It's just like real estate stuff that you don't really understand. And they're constantly putting out new things. They do this dinner and discussions where they bring in these professionals about everything about, dealing with taxes and homes and maybe it's divorce in homes, whatever it may be. They do these dinner and discussions. It's really amazing that they invite people in. So check them out. It's lindacraft.com, LINDACRAFT.com. And we're back here on A New Direction with my friend. Well, we haven't officially declared that to the world. I just did. Dr. Melissa Robinson-Winemiller.
I'm all for it.
Are you for it? Okay, good.
Yeah, I am.
That helps me then, because then I'm not left out here on a branch somewhere waiting for it to crack and fall off. The Empathic Leader, How EQ via Empathy Transforms Leadership for Better Profit, Productivity, and Innovation. As you can see, her and I are having a lot of fun doing this because it's fun. This is what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be fun. Let's talk about how do I learn this skill? I want to be a better leader, right? And how can I learn this emotional intelligence via empathy? Where do I start with how to learn this stuff?
You start with self-empathy. You begin with self-empathy, and there's 4 steps to being able to begin there. And you understand that you've got to be able to approach it without self-judgment. You got to be critical, not caring. Critical meaning that you're crunching numbers like a computer. You're looking at data. You're looking at what you're doing. The not caring meaning you're not putting judgment on it. You're not putting values on it. You're not, oh, I can't believe I can't get this kind of thing.
Mm.
So when you're starting with the self-empathy side of things, the first thing you do is self-observation. And I know that that seems, like you should just be able to do that, but think of it like a basketball player, right? You're out there and you're shooting hoops and it's over and it's over and it's over and it's over. But you can just go through the motions and be like, oh, that's good enough. Or you can step outside of yourself and observe what you're doing and say, yeah, maybe I could have done that better. Maybe this was fantastic because I did this or this. Maybe I shouldn't have gone out drinking the night before and I could have played better today. No judgment, critical, not caring, but observing, watching what's happening. The next step is self-reflection. And that's where you're turning the lens in to see how this affects you, right? Why you're doing the things you do, what triggered you. Okay, I'm continually hitting this over to the left side, but let me reflect on what I'm doing, and that, maybe if I hadn't been out drinking last night, I would be able to do better with hitting this hoop as often as I should. After you turn the lens in, you turn the lens out. That's self-awareness. Now I see how what I'm doing actually looks to other people. I see how it's affecting other people. I see how it may be affecting my teammates. Oh, because I'm not hitting these hoops every time that I should be, the rest of my team is failing. What can I do to make this better? And this might be hard for me to understand. This might be hard for me to swallow, but it's without judgment. It's just, how can I be aware of how I'm affecting everybody else and how can I make it better? And then once you do all of that, then you can start to get into self-empathy and actually being able to understand and connect. Okay, I understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. I've connected to the fact that maybe this is what I need to do to be better, to be more self-aware, to be able to take this onto myself that, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have gone out drinking last night. Maybe, no judgment, but maybe next time I don't do that so I don't let my team down. And now, once you know what it feels like to understand and connect with yourself, now you can start showing it to other people.
Mm. So do we just have to do this one time and I've got it? Or how does that work?
Nope, afraid not. Practice makes permanent, which means you do it over and over and over. But I mean, the good news is you're growing, you're learning, you're getting better. So
I was, as I was reading it, because you quoted a statistic. Well, it's kind of a statistic. It's a fact. Depending on what author you read, to build a habit is anywhere from 21 to 254 days. Okay, depending on which author you read. So if anybody says to you, well, it's 30 days to build a new habit, that's okay. There are so many variations in there that may not be true. But here's what I started thinking about when I was reading this part of the book. And that was, professional athletes practice fundamental skills every day. They just don't show up on game time.
right.
I mean, we're in football season right now. Wide receivers catch how many balls a day? How many punts do they catch, in practice a day? And it's every day. It's the same thing because you have to continually practice those skills. You just can't show up on game day and think you have it. And I think this is exactly the same thing. I'm thinking about all the baseball players who fielded ground balls day after day after day after day, right? So it just became an automatic habit. Did they still make some errors? Yes, they did. But you make fewer of them the more you practice. And I think that's what you're saying, because I am a sports guy. Am I getting it close?
Yes. Yes. Actually, you're right on. I mean, a lot of mine comes from my musical background and, 10,000 hours. You've got to put in 10,000 and you do. I mean, how many times do you have to hit a high C and pick it off? And my instrument was French horn. So it's like, how many times do I have to sit and get this attack just right and do this line over and over and over again? And the answer is one more time than you just did.
Right. Which was my problem on the trumpet and the French horn. I did not want to put in the time. Okay. I'm going to be honest. I didn't want to put in the time. I'm just being honest about that. I didn't. I'm staring at like 9 guitars in here and, going, you probably should pick one up, a little bit every day, is what I should be doing. You say the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Actually, you didn't say this, Carl Jung did. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Your darkness is a source of your light. When we talk about self-empathy and self-compassion, can you kind of put those things together, what Carl Jung said and how you fit that in? Because I thought it was a beautiful quote. And I love Carl Jung. I should say Jung, not Jung. The founder of analytic psychology. Can you put those two pieces together for us a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. No, I love that quote too. And I'm a Jungian fan too. So I think the thing is once you accept yourself, if you accept yourself completely, that's where a lot of people go, well, I'm done, finished. I have finished carving the statue. There's nothing left to do. Well, the problem is there's always something left to do. The statue is never done. So by accepting yourself completely, if it means you're just going to shut it down and say, job well done, I'm finished, that's not going to do you any good. Accepting yourself as far as understanding that there's flaws and there's more work to do, absolutely. But, in Jung's quote, your darkness is the source of your light. Understanding that there's more to do, understanding that there may be things that even though you think it's acceptable and you'd like to knock off for the day, there's still more to do. But that means facing that darkness.
I'm going to move into this chapter on 5 on how do I employ empathy as a leader. Help us understand how EQ via empathy affects our communication, because we all know that communication's a leadership skill that we got to have. How, as a leader, does EQ via empathy affect that?
Communication in particular is a sore spot for me. So, the statistic in the book, and this is from 2024, is that we're losing 1.2 trillion with a T dollars per year to bad communication, which seems pretty unacceptable to me. So if you're thinking about it in terms, right? Yeah, it's like, oh, that's an understatement. But if you're thinking of, communication in terms of a soft skill, one that you've got in your tool bag, if you're using empathy to be able to connect with your people, you're going to communicate with them better because you're not just barking at them, you're listening. You're understanding where there may be gaps. You're actually asking them where, maybe they didn't understand or where could things be clarified. And you're not just assuming that they've got all this ready to go. In music, we did have a saying where, in order to really play music, you should spend 80% of your time listening and 20% of your time making noise. And this is the same. If you're using empathy to listen and understand 80% of the time, then the 20% of the time that you're making noise is going to be effective. Instead of making noise 80% of the time and 60% of it just washing away.
So we've said then that empathy has a financial cost to the business.
Mm-hmm.
There's other costs too that are more than financial, isn't there, when we don't practice empathy as a leader? What's another cost that may cost us as a leader?
The cost on human capital. They talk about attrition now, Society of Human Resource Management. Attrition is one of the number one things that will cause a company to just hemorrhage money, not only because of the amount of money that's being taken out of the bottom line, but the actual talent you're losing. How much innovation are you losing? What could these people really bring to the company? And instead they take that plus any institutional knowledge they have and take it somewhere else. Again, we're back to people.
Right. So empathy can reduce our employee turnover, the ghosting, the resignations, whatever we want to call it, right? It's part of it. I hate to say this. We've done an hour.
No, really?
Yeah.
Jay, I totally lost track of time.
It's been fun. I got to be honest with you, because I could go on and go on with you, because this has just been a blast for me. I hope you've had as much fun as I have, because I've had a lot of fun with you.
I have.
This
is fantastic.
So much fun. So tell people how they can get a hold of you if they've got, because you do this coaching on empathy and you help leaders. I know that you love the sandwich managers. We didn't talk about that, but I know that you love them dearly because they're right on the front lines with the employees and you love working with them. And that, but tell people how they can get a hold of you if they want more information, if they want you to speak, or they just want you to sign some books. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So you can catch me at my website, which is EQ Via, and that's V as in Victor, IA, empathy. You can always catch me on social media. I'm on LinkedIn primarily. I'm on Instagram a little bit, but LinkedIn's probably best. I do have my podcast, so that's up on YouTube. It's called The Empathic Leader. And yeah, you can catch me in any of those places.
Awesome.
And of course, with the book.
Yeah, and of course with the book too. By the way, it's called The Empathic Leader. Just you can find it very colorful. She did a great job with that. Thank you so much, Melissa. Stay with me, please, as I close the show. Folks, this is the show. You know what I say to you every week. You're in control of three things: your attitude, your effort, and your resiliency. I know life doesn't always give us what we want, and it's sometimes we get circumstances that we didn't ask for. But you know what? You still have control over those three things. And attitude is the first one. I know it can be hard to maintain a positive attitude, but look for the opportunity in that positive attitude, because that's where it's going to come from. And it's your choice. Your effort isn't tied to your excellence. We all don't have the same amount of energy in the tank on any given day, but you know what? You can be as excellent as you can be with whatever you have left. Choose excellence. And we all get punched in the gut and knocked down in the teeth, and we get knocked down the ground, but it's up to us to get back up again. Why? Because you're worth it, and we want you on the team. I'm going to be back next week with another great guest, another great book. It automatically is another great show. It's the easiest job on earth. You know what? You had a lot of choices. You chose us. So thank you for doing that. You know what? Give us a thumbs up on YouTube if you watch the show there. Wherever you're listening to the show, give us a 5-star review. We could always use it. It would always be helpful to us. Tell your friends too. And that's a great thing for us to do. As I say to you all over the world, you know what that is. Ciao, everybody.